All right. So we specially bulletproofed the front of this for any tough questions, and no. All right. So before we get started, I want to just bring out a few things and make a few announcements that'll kind of get us in the right sort of frame for these things. So first of all, I want to let you know that I just had a Gadol class, which is the teenagers 13 through 18. We talked about relationships, including dating and marriage, and I just lined them up and married them all and made it all easier, so that's good. So I'm kidding. No, I'm not. No, I'm kidding. All right, so it was a really great class, and we talked about all these different relationships. The children interacted fantastic. The teenagers did a great job. It was really great. Oh, yeah, no, it was great. I'm really enjoying actually working with them this feast. It's been really fantastic. Okay, let's remember that we are doing the Omer count challenge. All right, and today is what day is it? 3. So what are we focusing on today? Family, and what's the fruit of the Spirit we're focusing? Love. So loving our families. Okay, we're focusing on loving our families. Awesome. Okay, I hope you're enjoying the challenge and that you're getting blessed by it. All right, just a couple of things on the upcoming deal here. So after this Midrash, we have our dinner break. We may have people coming back here tonight who want to have family fun time, and we do have some people scheduled for some counseling. We'll try to get that in. It's very hard. I get invited out with people, and then dinner takes longer, and then I miss out on things. So I apologize. I'm trying my best. All right, Wednesday, tomorrow, is free day. That's your day to go out and find yourself a house so you can move here. Or an apartment, or somebody that has a spare room or something. Okay, no. So it's free day. Go out and enjoy. There's some wonderful things to see here in Chattanooga. There's great stuff if you want to drive a little further, south into Atlanta, north into Knoxville, and then a little bit further east into Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, and all that kind of great stuff. Beautiful up in the mountains. Lots of stuff up the Ocoee River over here. And so, just enjoy your day on free day, okay? It says family time at the end. We're not scheduling like family free time here necessarily, but it's just family time. We're not scheduling anything. Just go, have a free day, and enjoy each other. All right. Then on Thursday, the one thing I want to make sure to bring out is that we are having our property tour and Q&A in the afternoon, after lunch, which means that I need to talk to the safety guys and Elder Billy and some others about what that's going to look like. Because I haven't really thought about what the property tour would actually look like or how we would do that. But we're going to figure out a way to show you the property over there by the farm at 2:30. And then we will be doing a Q&A. Now, here's the other thing. We were going to take a family meaning all of you, right? A family picture at the picnic and mikvah, but the weather wasn't really great. It was freezing. Everybody was bundled up. It was windy. So we're going to do the picture that with the big group photo Thursday, right before the tour. Okay, so go to the farm after lunch. We'll announce it again on Thursday. Go to the farm after lunch, and we'll go and meet by where the children are doing the YMTY activities. There's a barn there, and we take a picture and get everybody in the picture. We would prefer you to wear, if possible, an MTOI shirt or sweatshirt or something like that. I don't care what color you wear. You can wear anything you want. If you don't wear an MTOI shirt, we will throw you off the property. And then, no, I'm kidding. You can still be in the picture. Don't worry about it. Okay. We'll make you stand behind somebody or something, and nobody know. All right. So just remember, it's not on your schedule this way. So we are going to take a group picture after lunch, 2:30 at the farm, right before we do the property tour. Okay? Just wanted to make sure that was clear. All right. I think that's going to cover for announcements. Now, this is always a lot of fun. It's a time when you get to do your Q&A. This is almost like a zone 1, right? Okay, but I'm going to let people online, no matter where you're from, you can ask questions. We'll see what we can get in the next 2 hours. And so you can ask questions about pretty much anything. I may not answer them, but you certainly can ask. And no, I'll take a shot at pretty much almost anything. Here are the ground rules, all right? The ground rules came out of the very first time I did this about 20 years ago, and I realized that we needed ground rules. All right, so ground rule number 1. If you are coming up to make a comment or put out an understanding you have of something, or you're talking about a particular verse, for example, and you think that it means this or that, let's be really careful that we're not presenting our speculation or what other people have speculated that you've read over the years as fact. All right? Be careful. Let's just be careful with that. So what we do is we read whatever it is you want us to read. We read the verse. We agree what it actually says. Like, literally, this is what it says. And then we can debate or come up with our own understandings of what it might mean or what it's trying to say. Can we agree that there's a difference between what something says and what it's trying to say? Sometimes there's a difference. Not always. Sometimes it's very straightforward. Okay? So I want us to be able to do that. All right? Because we had a lady get up about 20 years ago at the Mountain Lake Ranch, one of our first Sukkots, and said, I want to talk about Revelation, about the white throne judgment, the judgment of the damned. And I said, hold on, let's read the verse. It doesn't say that. Okay? Nowhere does it say that. But that's what she understood. I said, fine, you can make an argument or a case for why you believe that's the case after we agree that it doesn't say that. All right? Because it doesn't. Now, could there be some of that going on in that verse? Well, we can debate and argue. But that's not what it says. And that's what's important that we get to that. That's rule number one. Rule number two, or guideline number two. If I think the answer to the question is much better suited by you listening to the teaching that's related to that subject, I may not answer the question and simply send you to the teaching. Okay? Hopefully that's fair, because it may need more of a full argument for the type of question you're asking than to just throw a little soundbite out there that you may just accept, which you shouldn't blindly, or reject, which you shouldn't blindly. But you may need to hear the whole case. So I think that's very important. Hopefully we can all agree. All right? And the third thing is, generally speaking, I'm not going to deal with eschatology questions. I don't necessarily see the value in that. I know that you guys love that stuff. Actually, you know what? Because Norma spoke up, we're going to stop doing all this. I'm just going to do Millennium Kingdom Part 4. No, I'm kidding. I heard you, Norma, over there. See, I heard you. Okay. So, because I know a lot of people get wrapped up and they want to go to Daniel and Matthew and Revelation and all that. I mean, I'm familiar with all the stuff that you want to go to with that. And the fact that life is looking pretty weird out there. So naturally, when life gets weird, we all think it's the end times. And by the way, every generation thinks that, so it's nothing new for us to think it as well. And it may be at some point. I just don't think this necessarily is yet. And so those are kind of my guidelines. And now you can go ahead and try and ask an eschatology question. I may just tell you I'm not going to answer it, and just you know. Okay. So who would like to go first? Now that I made those guidelines, come line up. Got the podium over here, and I've got Shamash Rob on the computer, who's going to be taking down your questions. All right, we'll begin with, excuse me. I'm going to have a problem with my voice. I got distracted by your little one. Introduce yourself with him, too, to everybody.
I'm Sierra Troyer, and this is Jeremiah.
Hi, Jeremiah. Jeremiah, what's your question? Not yet, huh? All right, Sierra, go ahead.
Okay. In Matthew 27:51, it talks a little bit about a curtain being ripped apart. Could you talk a little bit about why that happened? Some people like to use that verse to explain away our need for leadership, which I know is wrong, but what is a different explanation for that?
Okay. Well, it's not so much a different one. Let's just go with like a better one or a more correct one. All right? I mean, I can make up anything that'd be different than that. All right. So we should recognize that, A, we live so much out of time from when these things happen that none of us, unless we've done research and study, none of us really know what the temple looked like. Okay, we just don't. I mean, we've seen maybe some pictures and stuff, and we don't realize that there was more than one veil. Okay? And so the question is, which veil was it that was torn in two from top to bottom? when the earth was shaken? That's the question. And what happens is we naturally have heard that it's the veil to the Holy of Holies, which is completely not true and doesn't fit the actual narrative. It was the veil outside that separated the courts. And so this is part of when he says that let's look at Ephesians, I think, chapter 2. Sometimes I worry if I'm going to remember my addresses. Okay, in Ephesians chapter 2, and it says, and let's look at, say, verse 11. Therefore, remember that you, once Gentiles in the flesh, who are called the uncircumcision by that which is called circumcision. So the Gentiles, you're called Gentiles by the Jews, made in the flesh by hands, that at that time, when you were Gentiles, you were without Messiah, excluded from citizenship of Israel, and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no expectation and without worship in the world, without Elohim in the world. Okay, so there was only so far that you could go as far as moving towards the inside of the temple if you were a Gentile. You couldn't go past a certain point. There was a curtain there. Okay? And so you were excluded. You were outside. You weren't part of the covenants. He says, but now in Messiah, you who were once afar off have been brought near by the blood of Messiah, for he is our peace, who has made both one, having broken down the partition of the barrier. See, that's referring also to the tearing of that veil. Okay? And then he says, having abolished in his flesh the enmity between us and Messiah? No. He's not talking about that. Who's he talking that's having a problem? The Jew and the Gentile. So he has abolished the enmity, okay, the Torah of commands and dogma. In other words, the traditions that have made it so that Jew and Gentile cannot interact. Because there aren't a lot of scripture that matched up with what the Jews believed at the time that prevented this interaction in a lot of ways with the Jew and the Gentile. Okay? So as to create in himself one renewed man out of the two, thus making peace. Okay? So he's taking, listen now, he says, and to completely restore to favor both of them, the ones that had enmity, through the stake, having destroyed the enmity by it. Okay? This has nothing to do with Torah. It has nothing to do with people breaking Torah. This has nothing to do with observing Torah. This has to do with the relationship between a Jew and a Gentile. Okay, and that was a problem in the Ephesian congregation. It was a problem in all the congregations. This enmity between Jew and Gentile coming into belief. Okay? And so there are verses that talk about, and places that talk about how you could see in through the torn veil. You could see in. Well, you couldn't see into the Holy of Holies where it was. There's no place outside of the temple where you could see into the Holy of Holies if that veil was torn. You'd have to, first of all, be looking much too far deep into the building, so no angle would have gotten you that. And you would have seen through several other veils. Okay? So the better answer and the right answer is that it wasn't the veil they say it was, and therefore everything that they suppose based on that premise is therefore wrong. Okay? Because if you have a false premise, you're going to come up with a false answer. If there's an error in the premise, there's going to be an error in the answer. Okay, next.
Shalom, Rabbi. My name is William from Waterford.
Okay, William.
The verse I'm going to read is not my question, but it's something that leads up to my question.
Okay.
Okay, in Job 14:12, it reads here, and man shall lie down and not rise till the heavens are no more. They awake not and nor are aroused from their sleep. Now, my question is, through the many years I've been studying the Bible, through different years at different churches and different things, I've heard many different stories about the 3 days and 3 nights when Yeshua was dead in the tomb. Some have said he has gone out, his spirit left and did things around. Others thought he was, just trapped in a body waiting to be risen by Yeshua, Yahweh. And some teach that he had no connection with the Father, had no thoughts, emotions, or anything. I would like to know what you think. Thank you.
All right, see, you're trying to get me into that eschatology stuff. That's okay. It's okay. I see you guys are sneaky. All right. Look, there are, and you know what? All of this is in Millennium Kingdom Part 4. Okay. Okay, and actually, Norma has the only copy of the CD, so you have to borrow it from her. Of course, it's blank, but it does have the label on it. I made her one with a label that says Millennium Kingdom Part 4. That's okay. She gave me a $4 million check for it that doesn't have any other value either, so it's okay. So, and the funny thing is, I made the CD at the same time she made the check, not knowing we were going to give them to each other. So it worked out. So we both have something that's funny and useless. Okay, so, although I am believing one day that she'll have enough money to make the check good, the CD will never be good. All right, so, look, there is very, very little specific scripture with clarity that says anything about what Yeshua did when he was during those 3 days. There are some hints at things about visiting those in prison and other things like that. And it doesn't really give us a whole lot of clarity of what that's all about. All we know is that he was dead and that he was in the grave, it says, for 3 days and 3 nights. So he was in the grave, because that's what he said specifically. I'm going to be like the sign of Jonah in the grave 3 days and 3 nights. And so he was. So anything else that was going on, we can speculate all we want. We don't have real clarity for that. And quite frankly, it doesn't matter. What matters is he was in there 3 days and 3 nights, like he said. The only sign he said he would give, and he rose. That's all we need. The rest of it, one day he'll tell us. We'll get to ask him and he'll tell us. So I appreciate the question. I really don't know. I've wondered too about some of those things, and it just doesn't say. All right, Janet.
I have a question from Luke.
From Luke? Okay.
Yes, from chapter.
I'm going to refer that to Elder Billy from this morning. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
For chapter 6, when it was talking about blessing those cursing you and pray for those insulting you. And then there was one verse that says.
Okay, that was verse 28. Then what?
29. And to him who hits you on the one cheek, offer the other also. And then from him who takes away your garment, your outer garment, do not withhold the inner garment. So I'd like to understand that a little bit better. It's not saying that we should just allow people to just, be doormats.
No.
Right? And so that's one part. But the other part too, because it's connected to that, is like, if you love those loving you, what favor, do you have? And then they say, eventually it says, do good to those, do good to other people so that you receive. So it's a little bit about what in other religions they talk about karma, or even, like the people who are motivational speakers, they talk about, the law of attraction and all that. Is it any of this connected with what he's
All right, they're all connected to some degree, okay? And by the way, I was watching a clip from the Oscars, and I think Chris Rock may be Torah observer, because I saw him lean forward after he got smacked the first time to offer the other cheek. So anyway, it looked like he kind of leaned up, here, got another one. All right, no, I'm joking. All right, so you asked a couple of things. They're kind of linked, but they're not, but I'll kind of put them all together. So the first thing is this. We're not to be doormats, no. Okay, we're not told that our life is just to be doormats. What he's trying to do is he's talking about relationships, okay? And so he knows the hardest relationships we have is with those that we have adversity with, those that we have issues with or have issues with us, right? So he's trying to say, look, verse 27, but I say to you who are hearing, love your enemies and do good to those that hate you. In other words, I want you to look at things from a different perspective, he's saying. He says, to him who hits you on the one cheek, offer the other one as well. For him who takes away your outer garment, do not withhold the inner garment. In other words, be not receiving and then being, because of self, being offended and angered and, but basically inside, okay, he slapped you. All right, so stay calm and see what's going on. Like the idea of offering the other cheek. Instead of getting smacked and then right away you just lash out back to the other person. Hey, if somebody takes your outer garment, maybe they need something. Offer the inner one. Also, by the way, if you have somebody get so mad at you, smack you, and you offer them the other cheek, you might get their attention to realize, wow, you know. Two things are the wow. One is, that's not the reaction I was hoping for when I smacked you. Because if they smacked you, they're hoping to get a certain reaction out of you. And for you to turn around and offer them the other side, that diffuses it to some degree. Okay? The same thing with the inner and outer garment. The person may feel a little differently if you say, wait a minute, let me give you the other one too. Because here they think they're doing something to you, and they're not. See, a lot of this is about the person thinking they're doing something to you, but when you express this reaction, they're not getting that, are they? I'm stealing your garment. No, it's okay. I actually will give you the other one too. That's not the same thing. Doesn't feel the same. Why would you do that? See, it changes the whole dynamic. All right? So it's not trying to get you to be a doormat, but it's to try to get you to basically handle a situation from a different perspective. Think about the other person more than yourself. They smacked you. Maybe you want to think about why they smacked you. Maybe it's because they're really going through something and you weren't really giving it the right attention. Maybe there's whole kinds of reasons. And they're trying to get your attention. Or maybe you did something that really angered them or upset them or hurt their feelings. Okay? Then he talks about, if you only love those who love you, what grace is it or what favor is it? What favor do you have? And then you mentioned something else. What was the other part? I don't remember what the other part was, Janet. Okay. So she was mentioning about the law of attraction and those kind of things and karma and all that stuff. Look, karma is another culture's trying to understand reaping and sowing. Okay? I mean, look, it's not surprising that every culture has within it wise people over the centuries who observed that certain things work a certain way. And that's what you would call cultural wisdom. Okay, every group of people, you can go back and see their cultural wisdom. You can see this in the Indian cultures with things like the Hindu and the Buddhists. You can see this with the Taoists and the Chinese cultures. You can see this with the Aztecs. You can see this with all these older cultures. There's a certain amount of wisdom. I'm not saying that all the other pagan stuff is right or anything, but they've just had enough discernment to recognize, hey, when you do something, there's a cause and effect. And you reap what you sow. If we call that karma, you know, you treat people bad, and all of a sudden it blows up in your face, somebody treats you bad. They would call that karma. I would call that, you will not mock Elohim, you will reap what you sow. And so let's not get too hung up on the fact that other cultures can come up with the ability to identify and see that certain things actually work a certain way. All right? That brings us to the law of attraction. Okay, the law of attraction is simply the same thing. Abba tells us, okay, we read this in Luke. Let me just figure out where it was, a couple of chapters in. Let me see. Chapter 13. No? Where were we today? Chapter 12. Yeah, chapter 12. All right? I'm used to where it is in Matthew, but we'll go with Luke because we read Luke today. Law of attraction. So Yahweh says, you don't need to worry about things like your clothing and all these other things. You don't have to worry about stuff, right? Starting in verse 22. And he said to all ones, for this reason I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you shall eat, nor about whatever, etc. He's going to say no. He's going to say, seek those things above, and the other things come to you. It's like the law of attraction. Focus your attention on the right things, and you'll attract the right things into your life. Focus on the wrong things, you attract the wrong things into your life, which is also part of the reaping and sowing. Remember, we are not taught this very much in Scripture directly. Okay, directly. We're taught it in a lot of ways. But a lot of the personal development coaches out there have identified that thoughts are things. They have substance. And so if you think on, remember it says, as a man thinks, so he is. Because thoughts are things. Out of the abundance of the heart, which is where our mind and our thoughts end up, our actions come out of that, right? And so if you think about something enough, you will tend to attract into your life opportunity for that to be. If you want to cheat on your spouse, and that's what you focus on and think about, somebody will show up to tempt you to do that. If you want your marriage to improve and you focus on it and think about it, something might happen to give that an opportunity. Do you understand what I'm saying? So law of attraction is a new agey way of dealing with something Scripture already tells us. And it simply says that what you focus on over time tends to manifest. That's all it says. And the reason it tends to manifest is because you tend to do the things that the thought needs you to do to manifest. But you wouldn't do them if you weren't thinking about it all the time. Okay? Everybody out there that you know that's mega successful in any area, mega obsessed on that thing before it became real. In other words, that obsessive thinking about and desiring and emotion is how major, incredible things end up coming into existence. Because somebody obsessed on the idea. Nobody became a gold medalist in the Olympics without obsessing. No great invention came out without obsessing. None of the big successes you can think of in the world happen without somebody obsessing on it. Thinking about it, and doing it from a point of believing, which is what law of attraction talks about. If you think about something and really truly believe that you can have it, and you focus on it, then things will start to fall into place. You'll start to attract. We call this luck. It's not luck. It's obsessive focus and preparedness coming into the same place where opportunity shows up. It's not luck. Because if it showed up and you weren't ready for it, you would have thought it was bad luck. Oh, sure, now it comes and I'm not ready and I can't do anything with it. That really. Then later when you're ready, you go, oh man, why isn't it here now? And so my understanding, it's funny because when the book came out and the movie came out, I actually thought back then that I would do a teaching showing law of attraction is biblical, because there was a bunch of people that were really upset about it when it came out, thinking that it was sort of anti-God, vertical and all that stuff, and it's not. It's just presented poorly. It's presented in a more secular, humanistic way, or a new agey way, but it's absolutely scriptural. I mean, it says, as a man thinks, so he is. And the reason he is because he attracts all that stuff into his life. And we have lots of verses about the fool and the wise person talking about what they attract into their lives. And so I think it actually can play out very well. All right. Did that help? All right, good. All right. Mr. Steve Waffle.
All right. First, I want to give my appreciation to Rebbitzin and Rabbi for all the wonderful food that we've been cooking in the kitchen in the past few days, because definitely good stuff.
Look, we actually plucked all the chickens that we made the chicken strips from, and we grew the potatoes and peeled them. No, I'm kidding. So go ahead.
All right.
No, the guys in the kitchen done a great job, haven't they?
And then I saw something recently that talked about how Hebrew wasn't the actual original language. Have you seen anything recently? Okay.
What did you say?
They implied that Hebrew isn't actually the language of Abba.
So what did they say? What?
They found some kind of new tablet that indicates that, and I just didn't know if you had seen or read anything on that.
I'm not familiar. So, no, I'm quite confident that it was Hebrew that when he says that the word that brought everything into existence was brought into existence by the 22 letters, which, by the way, when you talk about how many chromosomes you have, and you understand your DNA, okay? And so these are the building blocks of life. All right, Norma?
Short question again. Shemot 4:22, it says that Israel is my son, my firstborn. But I get confused with how can be also be the bride, or I have the concepts upside down here.
No, you don't have the concepts upside down. What you're trying to do is you're trying to take metaphors to make a point and make them literal.
Okay.
In certain contexts of the point Abba's making, he wants to refer to Israel as his firstborn and his son. In other contexts of the relationship he wants us to understand, he refers to the bride. Okay? So it has to do with the understanding of the role that he's trying to get us to understand that we play and he plays in that relationship. Okay? Mm-hmm. So it's really about the context of what he's trying to say. These are all metaphors to make a point. And we don't just take that metaphor and think that that metaphor now applies everywhere. Okay, because it doesn't just apply everywhere. Because then you say, so for the bride and he's marrying his son, how could that be? And he killed the family. It just doesn't work that way, all right? So in one context, as he's bringing them out, and he's bringing them out of Egypt, and he's starting them off as children, he says, you're my firstborn. In other words, you're the first nation that I've given birth to. You are the first fruits of my works on the earth. And then he wants to understand that our relationship between us and him is going to be like a bride and a groom. Not literally. We're not going to literally have a wedding ceremony and we're going to be covenanted in a way that's like a bride and a groom are covenanted. And a chadness, a oneness like you get with a bride and a groom. So he chooses the metaphor depending on which point he's trying to make at the time. Does that make sense now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right? Okay, Sierra, and then I'm going to try to bounce back and forth a little bit more continuous. So this is about 30 minutes in. So I'll get Sierra, and then we'll go to the live stream, and then we'll come back out. We'll go back and forth. All right.
Okay, so
Unless Jeremiah wants to ask the question.
what are your thoughts regarding the following situation? A ardent Christian asks a Torah observant person if the Torah observant person thinks the ardent Christian is going to make it into the kingdom. What would a proper response look like, considering that there are scriptures that say we should not judge?
Okay. Well, first of all, the right answer for you is we don't know. We don't know if anybody's getting in. I mean, there's not a person in this room that I can say I know is getting in, okay? Because that's your journey, and at any point, you can go any which way you can go. And some of you, who I might think are more likely not to get in, will, and some of you that I think are absolutely getting in won't, because of the choices you'll make after this moment, right? Sometime in the future, you might make a choice. And so I would avoid the question this way by simply saying, that is not something that we are to do. That's between you and our Creator. I don't have an opinion about whether or not you get in. I try not to think about whether or not anybody gets in. That's what I would tell them. That is between. Now, I know that I believe I'm supposed to do this as part of my journey in. Now, if you really wanted to get into a big discussion, you could say, and my expectation is that one day your bubble will get popped and you'll be doing this too. That may be in the millennium. Go listen to the millennium teaching. I'm not joking this time. I actually want you to go listen to the millennium teaching. But I would never answer that question if it was asked to me. I would simply say, that's above my pay grade. I literally am not trying to make a joke or avoid your question. I would tell them, I don't want to be one trying to think about whether somebody gets in or not. I never want to be thinking that thought. Okay? All right. Go ahead.
Okay, so
No, I forgot your first name.
it's Heather.
Heather. Okay.
So my question is in 1 Timothy and in 2 Timothy, where Shaul is talking in chapter 1, verse 20, says, among these, it says, having a belief, before that, having belief and good conscience, which some have thrust aside and suffered shipwreck concerning their belief. Among these are Hymenaeus and Alexander, whom I delivered to Satan in order to be taught not to blaspheme. So here he brings up this gentleman, Alexander. And then in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 14, I think it might be the same Alexander, but it says, Alexander the coppersmith did many evils to me. The master shall repay him according to his works. You too beware of him, for he strongly opposed our words. So my question has to do with Lashon Hara. Is it okay to warn someone of someone else if we see potentially that their influence or their interaction could cause harm to someone else? Are we committing Lashon Hara by saying, don't hang around that person, or they did this to me, or a company or an organization or something like that? Is that Lashon Hara?
It certainly can be. It really is going to depend on, in this case, it's Shaul talking to his congregation. And so for him, it's part of his responsibility. So a lot of it really is going to have to do with the relationship you have and the responsibility you have. If it's somebody that you have no responsibility for and you're just friends with them, they may be having a completely different experience than you are with that person. And that person may legitimately be treating them differently than you, or that organization, or whatever it is. So it really has to do with the closeness of your relationship and how you word it. Okay? If you want to say, look, I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I thought it may be useful information for you to know this is my experience, as opposed to saying, well, you shouldn't be with that person. Well, now you've judged it.
Right.
Okay? So if you're close enough with someone where you feel that there is an appropriate responsibility to share information in sort of a sharing accountability and responsibility relationship, like you're like a close enough friend, you may want to say to them, look, this person may be perfectly fine, or this organization, and may be treating you great, I don't know. But I thought it would be appropriate to share something I experienced, and then you can decide if that's relevant or not to what you do.
Okay.
But this way you're not guiding them to think a certain way.
It's a fine line, seems.
It's a very fine line.
I was thinking more like a parent to child relationship.
Yeah, parent to child, definitely you should say things, because that's you have full responsibility like Paul does here. And Paul is absolutely, in 2 Timothy, warning them about a person. But that's because he has that sort of parent-child relationship with his congregation. Okay, that burden of responsibility, okay?
Thank you.
All right, good. We just got to be really careful that we're not trying to get others to see an organization or a person or whatever it is the way we see it. Because now we're in our judgment, we've already made a decision, and we want others to see that same thing the way we do. Rather, because I've had people do that to me many times in my life, try to get me to see others a certain way. And my answer always is simple. I'll take that information with a grain of salt, so to speak. I'll keep that information. But at this point, that has not been my experience. Or I may say, you know what? I've noticed that too, and I am aware, and I'm keeping an eye on it, or something like that, right? But I like to be a person that has integrity to say, I only respond and treat people based on how they treat me, not on how they treat you. Okay? Now, if you are close to me, you're my wife, you're my children, and you treat them badly, and I know factually that has happened, then I may desire to keep a little bit more distance with you because you're treating what is mine badly. Even if it's not me, it's still mine. Does that make sense? Okay, that's another extension of me, as opposed to how a friend or another person was treated. I don't know how that all goes. I don't know what the situation is, but this is mine, and so you treat mine, you might as well be treating me. So then I have to have a reaction in that way. Okay, Amy.
Hi. Did you get your shirt?
No. If you gave it to my wife, she has it, but I didn't get my shirt. She's talking about the Ohio shirt I mentioned earlier.
Okay. This is actually Ben's.
Put it right
This
up.
is Ben's question, but he's over at the farm doing safety. So
Right.
hopefully I ask it right. It has to do with Abraham and Isaac. So you've said that there's 3 voices in our head, and you need to question anything that you're going to do compared to Scripture. So it says here that it came to be after these events that Elohim tried Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am. And he said, take your son, and offer him. Well, if you heard that in your head, if it says no one has heard the voice of Yahweh on earth, how did he hear that? Because if you were to compare that to other scriptures, that seems like human sacrifice. So if you were to go back and say, like, okay, he said to do this, but that's pagan, but he said he went off and he did it. Like, how did he know that that was Yahweh and not himself thinking it or Satan saying it? And so if we have a thought pop into our head, how would we know the voice?
All right. So the real important part of this, okay, and I get where you're coming from with this, is that Abraham, well, first of all, it's the difference between when I did the father and the son teaching as far as the voice he was hearing was Yeshua's voice, okay? Because it says none have seen or heard his voice. So it's not the Father talking here, it's Yeshua in that form, in the relationship he had with Abraham. That's how Abraham recognized him when he sat down and had lunch with him. So Abraham had enough of a relationship with him, which is why when he said, Abram, he didn't say, who are you? He said, here I am. He knew because of the relationship and interacting on a regular enough basis. So we, who don't have that initially, we spend a lot of our life without that relationship being where it should be, have had Hasatan's voice and our own voice ringing in our head most of our lives. We have a hard time separating them. We actually have a volunteer fire department actually right behind us. Okay. And so realize also that Abraham literally had conversations where he spoke and Yahweh spoke and he spoke and Yahweh. They spoke to each other. We don't get to do that. Okay? So he didn't have the same challenge that we have. So when Yahweh told him to do something, he knew exactly who was talking and he knew that he needed to trust that. So it wasn't kind of comparable to what we struggle with. Does that make sense? Okay. It doesn't say it clearly in your scriptures. It does hint at in the book of Yashar, the book of Jasher, that Abraham had a very strong knowledge of Yahweh before we read about some of the things that we read about in scripture because he was raised by his grandfather Noah, okay? And Noah taught him and introduced him to Yahweh. And so when Yahweh calls him to leave his family and go, he wasn't like shocked that there was a voice talking to him. He already had a relationship. Okay. You look familiar. Have you been up before? Okay, Sierra.
Okay. Could you talk a little bit about or point to something that could point to how we know on a scientific level if and how God exists? And then maybe the second part to that question, which might also kind of be really relevant, is I have a friend who's really open. She says she's really open to all sorts of things. She's doing her own thing. How would she wanted to know that, and then what is my role supposed to be to somebody who's curious, but yeah.
Okay, I mean, that's a very challenging question. I did forget I was going to go to the live stream, so let's try to get to that after I answer your question. So, look, I'm not real well-versed on the many ways that people have to do a great job of showing how science absolutely backs up that God exists, okay? So there's plenty of stuff out there that you can find. I've not done teachings like that, and so I don't want to go out and try to answer that question in a way that there's probably really great ways to answer that question, okay? And so certainly you can find, a lot of them are Christian guys putting it out there, but at least they are making the scientific argument, okay, even though they're coming from a Christian background. And so I would encourage you to find some of those and see if they can, maybe not give them to the person to watch, because then they may end up going towards Christianity, but at least learning the things that are the things that they quote that do that kind of stuff, okay? And your role is limited. She shows and says she has some interest. Well, see how she does. Try and answer one question and see where that goes. And if that interest asks another question, well, then answer that question if you can and see where that goes. That's basically where I would leave it. And at some point, if she has real interest, you should be able to encourage her to try one of my teachings, and that will really be the test. Because if she's genuinely interested, the teachings will light her up on like a fire, okay? If she's not going to be interested in what's on the teachings. Okay, thank you. All right, Rob. And then we'll go to Michelle after that. Well, actually, you know what, Michelle? You walked all the way up there. Can you wait?
Yeah.
All right, so good. She's good. Okay, Rob, go ahead. We'll do a couple questions from the stream.
Okay. Hopefully you can interpret this. Miss Romana says, isn't quote unquote self anything more about a self-focus rather than as a man thinketh, so he is. More Yah focus when we focus on him, he is bringing it rather than we manifesting it, which is very new age.
Okay, fortunately, I do speak Romana. We've talked many times. Okay, no, I'm teasing. So, look, I know that sometimes you want to kind of bend this into the way you want to hear it. You can manifest almost anything, good or bad. He created you to be a creator also. And so that's not New Agey, that's just the truth. All right, the New Age wants to embrace that as all of it. But the thing is, if you would focus correctly, Yahweh would bring it, and it would be the right things. But you can manifest anything good or bad in your life if you focus on it and put the effort in and do all the things that are in the normal formula. The formula that I gave you the other day, right? You desire something. Your beliefs are not out of line with that. So you have beliefs that are in line with what you desire. You commit to it, and then you make the effort. You will likely have it, whether it's good or bad. All right? So these things work for either. Just like he says, the sun shines on the good and the evil, etc. These things work for everybody. You know what? If I take my book and drop it, it's going to fall whether I'm good or evil, whether I'm righteous or a sinner, whether I'm a believer or a non-believer. I mean, these are just things that he put into the universe. These are all Torah, by the way. Biology is Torah. Physics is Torah. These are all things Yahweh put in place that is how things work. And so how this manifesting thing works is still Torah, but you're not necessarily have to be covenanted to make it work. Do you know that every success book that I've seen that really talks about money talks about giving 10%, even if they're not talking about tithing? That they've noticed that when you give 10%, you reap abundance? There are books out there, like The Richest Man in Babylon and others, that talk about giving 10% was one of the secrets to the wealth. It didn't talk about it as tithing, just giving away 10%. See, that works, by the way, whether you're in Torah observance or not. Yahweh made that a rule. If you would take 10% and give it away, it would benefit you. If you give it away correctly, it will really benefit you. Yahweh's rules do work. He puts them in place for his reasons, and they work. All right? So, yes, if you focus on the things of Yah, you will reap the things of Yah. But whatever you focus on, you're going to reap. I'm telling you, if I were to focus on two things, let's say I was focusing on I don't like my wife, and she's making me all mad, and man, I really want to find somebody else, and guess what? I'm going to have a terrible relationship with my wife, and I'm going to find somebody else. That will happen. Now, I'm not saying I manifested it like magic, but that's the way Yahweh made it. For good or for bad, you bring into your life what you focus on and desire over time strongly enough. Whether good or bad, it's neutral. It doesn't care what you're focusing on. It just brings what you focus on. Now, thankfully, it doesn't happen immediately, okay? In other words, you don't focus on something for 5 minutes and boom, it's in your life. Because you realize sometimes fairly quickly, I shouldn't be focusing on that. I'm glad it didn't just show up. But over time, consistent, emotionally driven, strong emotionally driven focus will manifest you doing certain things and other things seeming to just by divine appointment show up in your life. And you can read all kinds of things into that. But it works for everyone, regardless of their belief system. Because it's the way he designed it. That's the way man works. That's the way our mind works, and our connection to each other and the universe and how he designed it just does that. Okay? You know, I had somebody, and I got a bunch of somebodies in here who could tell you that they heard some of the testimonies about tithing, believed what they heard, so with expectation started doing the tithing correctly, and their minds were blown all that they reaped. Now, you can believe that just was Yahweh blessing them, or you could also believe that's part of the way Yahweh designed it. He didn't have to actively do anything. Their doing it was going to bring it because it's what they expected and they believed, and they were doing the actions. And so that's works for good or bad. All right, next.
Okay, Ken Thomas says 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 42 through 44. Is this connected to Matthew 14, verse 20, seeing that this has happened before in the Tanakh?
Okay, hold on. Matthew 14, 20.
20.
Okay, I got that. In 2 Kings, what?
4, 42 through 44.
Okay, so in 2 Kings, we have a man came from Baal Shalisha and brought the man of Elohim bread and fruit, of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley bread and newly ripened grain in his knapsack. And he said, give it to the people to eat. And his servant said, what? Do I set this before 100 men? And he said, give it to the people to eat, for thus said Yahweh, eat and have some left over. And he set it before them, and they ate and had some left over according to the words of Yahweh. And that's being compared to in Matthew and other places where we have, I'm sure, the fishes and loaves and that kind of thing. And then there was an abundance that was after. Okay? So in Matthew, it talks about, and they all ate and were satisfied, and they had picked up all the leftover pieces, 12 baskets full. Okay. Yes, these things have happened before. These are things that also, as a Jew who would have known the things going on in 2 Kings, seen Yeshua do these things, would have connected it to at least that he was a prophet or a man sent by Yah, and connected the miracle to Yahweh. Okay? So absolutely, they're connected from that point of view. All right, what else?
From Allison Watson, is Romans 13 speaking about the government, example, kings, presidents, etc., or is it the fivefold?
Okay, 1 second. I know what you're talking about. Let me just go to it. So Romans 13, when it talks about let every being be in subjection to the governing authorities. Okay. This is literally talking about all governing authorities. Now, you also have to balance that with render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. If the governing authority is asking you to do a bunch of things you don't like, but they don't break Torah, then you still need to be submissive to the governing authority. I don't particularly like most of the speed limits out there. I think in most places they're too slow for the amount of traffic and for the way people drive and the safety. I mean, I just think they're too slow. But the government decides that, not me. And it doesn't break Torah to observe that instruction from the government. Okay? Now, if the government decided, and there are lots of governments in the past that have decided, and some still doing, that you cannot take Saturday off. Okay? My wife's family escaped out of Yugoslavia because the government at that time forced the children to have to go to school on Saturday. The schools were on Saturday. And her father had come to believe in the Sabbath. Okay? So he didn't always, but he came to the point where he did, and he had a bunch of children, and he realized he didn't want to have them in school on Saturday, and that would lead to getting arrested. So they escaped. I've also met people who were arrested for keeping Sabbath in a place where that was not allowed to be done. Okay? So, yes, you are going to be subject to the governing authorities. Well, there's no authority except from Elohim, and the authorities that exist are appointed by Elohim. Now, that is not just talking about governments. It certainly is talking about the fivefold and the vertical structure. But realize that everything you do in relation to any authority, your employer, if you're younger and you've got parents and you're at home and your parents have authority, I'm not talking about adults with adult parents, because you're not subject to their authority anymore. You just need to treat them with respect, okay? Once you're an adult, outside the house with your own life, your parents no longer have authority. You know that. You should know that. I've got people calling me, though, that don't know that. They call me up and go, but my mother told me I had... Listen, how old are you? 47. Okay, then your mother doesn't have any authority over you anymore. But she says I'm breaking the commandment. I need to honor. No, honor means show respect. And you can respectfully say no. You can respectfully disagree. You can respectfully set boundaries with your parents. But all authorities are set up in structure because Yahweh gave people to have authority. And those authorities, when you interact with them, you demonstrate how you feel about authority in general and how he may expect you to treat him based on how you treat other authorities. So none of you should be making fun of our current president. I can say that any president, okay? This one or any other one. I did say that, by the way, during Bush. I said it during Obama. I've always said this. Nobody should be mocking the president. Why? Because he's the president. Is he a good one, a bad one? That's an opinion you might have. But you don't make fun of the position. He's the president. And showing disrespect to authority is a bad habit to have. The king is the king. So if you lived under a king, and they did often in Scripture, it was the king. And you showed the king respect. You saw the respect that Daniel showed the king. And others in Babylon showed the king, even though they knew this king was a pagan king. How you respect authority is how you respect authority. Okay, so chapter 13 is talking about that. However, there is that place where you see some of the people like Daniel and others end up in the lion's den or in the fiery furnace because there are lines that they would not cross for that authority. They did it respectfully. They said, I'm sorry, I just can't do that. Or, yes, I did do that because I have to, because that's what my Elohim wants. And hopefully that answers that question. Next.
From Michael Ashley Condon. What does the omer actually mean? I guess the definition, and what is its significance?
All right, so the omer is actually a sheaf of the grain, okay? And it's a measure. I don't know exactly how much that is. I haven't looked it up in a long time as far as how much of it there is. But it's, when you're looking at Leviticus 23, where it talks about the omer and then we count the omer, it's talking about that first fruits sheaf that you give the priest and you wave it, all right? So it's a measurement. When it says, and you're going to make this out of so much of an omer of flour to make the cakes that you would make for the sacrifices and the offerings. So it's a measure. Like we would say, use a half a pound of flour, or a pound of flour, a cup of flour, or this of flour, right? You say what you need to use, depending on the size of the stuff you're cooking, what you're making. And omer was a count that they used back then, okay? Just like when they're talking about gold, they talk about how many garas something is. Who knows what that is, okay? And then we know that things are according to the shekel of the holy place, and then we have that measurement and that weight, okay? Then we know that something weighed in terms of the weight being in talents. So how much is a talent? You can look that up, all right? So an omer is an amount of grain, and it's referred in Leviticus, because we're counting the omer when it talks about Shavuot, to the amount of grain that you would then wave in the form of a sheaf, and you would wave it before the Almighty. Okay, next.
Michael Ashley Condon says, who made Yahweh?
Okay, and by the way, just so that I can get this for all of you real local people, like Michael and Ashley Condon, please let everybody else that doesn't get to ask questions and see me all the time ask the questions first, all right? Because you guys are here, all right? So who made Yahweh? I don't even know how you would think we could answer that question. According to what we understand, Yahweh has always existed. And it says in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was Elohim, the Word was with Elohim. That's all we know. Anything beyond that, we're not capable of understanding in this finite body and mind and everything that we have. Okay? It's a good question. It's a question every kid asks. Well, if there's a God, well, who was there before that, and who made him, and where'd that? See, and we all want to know these things. Well, we live inside of space and time, but they created space and time. So what were they in before there was space and time? I don't know. I just know that they are, and it's true. Okay? All right, next.
All right, the last one I have for right now. It's Greg Wallen says, Rabbi, it seems Deuteronomy 19:12, in essence, is a death sentence for the sin/crime committed in 1911. Is there a way we can apply this today? Why would they go to the city of refuge if they knew the outcome?
All right, 19:11. But when anyone hates his neighbor and shall lie in wait for him and rise against him and smite the life from him so that he dies, then he shall flee to one of the cities, and the elders of the city shall send and bring him from there and give him into the hand of the revenger of blood, and he shall die. Okay, so it's not so much worded correctly here. It's a little bit complicated there. There are these things known as the cities of refuge. And if you accidentally, unintentionally killed somebody, it can happen. The revenger of blood, meaning the family member that wanted to get revenge because you killed their family member, would chase you down and try to kill you. So you would get to go to this place called the city of refuge. I think what it's trying to say here in chapter 19 is, when someone hates his neighbor and lies in wait and then goes ahead and kills them, all right, and rises against him and smites life from him, that's premeditated, that's murder. I think the word if belongs in there. And if he flees to one of the cities, which is what he would do to try to make it look like he was innocent, then they will go ahead and send for him and bring him to the revenger of blood. So I think there was a word missing in there to help you understand. In other words, it's not that he should flee, it's just that he may just do that. Because first of all, when these things happen, they try to hunt people down very quickly. And usually the revenger of blood is the one trying to do that. Now, if the other authorities find them quickly enough and find out that he may be innocent, it may not have been intentional, okay, an accidental thing, then they may send him to the city of refuge. So I'm thinking that in this case, we're talking about if he flees, the elders of the city are going to send for him and bring him back and give him to the hand of the revenger of blood. Does that make more sense? All right? Amen. Okay. Michelle.
Okay, I know pigs are unclean, so I'm a chicken back off of the lady with the Lashon Hara thing. I'll just chicken back.
Okay, you're going to chicken back instead of piggyback?
Chicken back instead of piggyback.
Okay.
When I go somewhere and I get bad service reviews, is that the same?
Say it again. If you go somewhere and
if I go somewhere and I get like say I go eat somewhere and it's a horrible experience, putting 1 star, is that bad?
Okay, I get it. So you have some sort of experience with a vendor, a restaurant, or some other product or something, and there's a place where you can give a review. Is it Lashon Hara to give a review that's bad? Okay, my answer would be, depends on your motive. Okay, if it's, for example, a contractor, okay? Like we have a couple of people work in this, who are in our congregation that are contractors, and they have themselves on sites where people do reviews. And they have really great reviews, the guys that I'm talking about. But what if you had a bad experience, and maybe that bad experience was skewed from you were already in a bad mood and some other thing happened and this and that. So you decide you're going to go lash out in your review. So I would say, first of all, if it's a negative review, and I told this to the teenagers today, and I'll tell you the same thing to you. Never, ever, I wish this was a commandment I could give you. Never, ever post, text, or write anything when you're in a strong negative emotional place. But if you can then later be calm enough and objective enough to say, this was, without subjectivity, but completely objectively, a bad situation that I think others should know about, to have at least the opportunity. Bear in mind, when you look at reviews, you're going to find a bunch of people that said 5 stars and a bunch of people with like 1 star. And you think, how is that possible to have that wide a spectrum? Well, sometimes people have a little bone to, to grind, an axe to grind sort of thing, and they want to say something. Sometimes these things are phony reviews anyway. People are just putting them in because they're the competitors. Okay, so they give a lot of 1-star reviews, so you'll go to their place. Or they get their own friends to put all the 5-star reviews in that, they're not legitimate customers. So I don't really think your review matters all that much, just to be honest. Seriously. How many of you really, really make your decisions based on the reviews that you read? Okay. Okay, everybody except Michelle and Jessica then. Okay, you two seem to do that, nobody else does. Okay, no. Just be really careful with reviews because anybody could post a review. You don't even know if it's real. All right? I can imagine when I was in the secular world and I was doing a lot of my own entrepreneurial businesses and things, I can imagine if I was doing it now and there were review sites for the things I was doing, getting everybody I knew to go ahead and post a great review. And all of a sudden I got a whole bunch of 5-star reviews. Even people that never used my service or bought my product or anything. Why wouldn't you do that? Well, if you were honest, you wouldn't do that. I'm just saying, but this is the world out there, okay? And then, of course, if this is the competition, I might put a few bad reviews in there. I bet you there are people that even create their own separate accounts just so that they could actually write the bad reviews. You believe this, right? This does happen, doesn't it? So let's not give too much weight to reviews. But if you feel the need to post a review, make sure it's objective and not subjective, and that you're calm and you're not skewing it through some emotional negative stuff, okay?
You allow me another one, I'm going to be like Janet. Okay.
No.
So I have this problem sometimes. I struggle with focus.
It's funny. There used to be back in the 80s, I want to be like Mike. Now everybody wants to be like Janet, who is coming out with her own gym shoes soon. Air Janets, okay? All right, go ahead.
All right, so I struggle a lot sometimes with focus, even when I'm doing like my studies, like when I go through the teachings. And the only thing I found that sometimes helps me is like instrumental piano, or like, I know you've spoken about like meditation music, how be careful with that. So is there something else you could suggest?
Well, I don't know that there's really a whole lot of problem with just instrumental music, although a lot of it is used for certain things by certain people, whatever. But find a music that helps you focus. Look, I happen to be a longtime jazz trumpet player, and so I have some jazz stuff that I like to listen to instrumentally without words, not distracting me when I want to focus, okay? And so I can play that in the background. And so, and there are times when I've listened to stuff that was more like spa music, because I was a massage therapist at one point, and I used to listen to that kind of music all the time when I was working. And it has its certain amount of soothingness to it, etc. I find it hard to focus because it's more to put you in a coma than it is to focus. It's that quiet music, and you're like, All right? So the music I play is a little bit more upbeat and energized, and to kind of get me in that place where I'm ready to go. All right, so you got to find the stuff that works for you, okay? All right. You're welcome. I would stay away from stuff with words in it, because words are really more problematic. If you're looking to focus, you're looking to relax and everything, go to stuff that doesn't have any words in it. If you like classical music, fine. There's a lot of really dark and ugly classical music, but find some stuff that's uplifting and has a good sort of feel and rhythm to it that makes you have the feeling that you want, all right? Okay, so you listen to you have a piano type list that you like. That's fine, perfect. Okay? I go into different moods, where the other day, actually lasted about a week, I just got into, for whatever reason, saxophone. I normally go to trumpet, but I went to saxophone, and I was listening to just all kinds of just saxophone, solos and music things. You can go pull up, by the way, any of these things, and it'll give you a live one that just always plays. It's not really that it's live, but it's something they're broadcasting that's like listening to a radio station. It's just continually playing. So when you turn it on, it's already on. And you can get hours and hours of this stuff if that's what you want, Okay? And your name again?
Kyle.
Hi, Kyle.
Hello, Rabbi. In Matthew 1, 18, 19, can you help me understand why Joseph wasn't consulted before Miriam made that decision?
Matthew 1, 18.
18, 19.
Right. Okay, so with the birth of Yeshua, okay, it says after his mother Miriam was engaged to Joseph, before they came together, she was found to be pregnant from the set-apart spirit. And Joseph, her husband, being righteous and not wishing to make a show of her, had a mind to put her away secretly. All right. Think about which way would have been much more challenging. You're Joseph. Your wife's pregnant. You know you didn't do it. Okay? And then the messenger comes and explains how it happened. Or you're Joseph, and the messenger is explaining how your wife is about to be impregnated, not by you. I think it works better the way it did. Okay? All right? Because I think Joseph was very glad to find out that it went the way it did and it wasn't somebody else that came in. Because he loved his wife, and that's why he was willing to put her away secretly, which, if you listen to the divorce teaching, explains how significant that was, because that's not the way it normally was done. It was done very publicly. Okay? But he loved her. And I think he was relieved to find out what happened. But I think if someone approached him up front, he might not have been so thrilled with the idea. Okay? Like, hey, this is what we want to do. It's like, wait a minute, this is my bride-to-be. It's supposed to be me. You know, you see what I'm saying? Maybe it would have been a lot harder that way. I mean, that's my speculation. It doesn't say, obviously. But if I had to come up with a reasoning, I think it worked more likely for Joseph to handle it better the way it went.
But there was no issue with usurping his authority.
There was no issue with usurping his authority because the authority that did it was higher than him. Okay?
Can I have one more?
Yep.
In
We'll get you a pair of Janet's gym shoes later.
1 Corinthians 11.
From now on, you guys have to walk up if you're going to ask more than one question wearing the Air Janets. And we'll be selling them in the marketplace.
1 Corinthians 11:28, if you could expand
Okay,
on
1
that.
Corinthians 11,
28.
28. Okay.
Kind of that whole section there.
Okay, what do you want me to explain there?
Just about, oh, sorry, that's not the right one. 29, I guess. Unworthily drinking and eating of the master
Okay.
there.
So this is talking about, or likely talking about, the Passover, okay? All right, so when it's talking about, let's bear in mind, when he starts off talking about, he says, when you come together in one place, verse 20, it is not to eat the master's supper. For when you eat, each one takes his own supper first, and then one is hungry and another is drunk. Have you not houses to eat and drink in? Blah, blah, blah. For I receive. So they were doing things they shouldn't do when they were coming together. This could have been in fellowship and doing Kiddush and Motzi. It could have been during the Passover meal. The idea is when you're doing things in a covenanted way, and you don't do it in a worthy manner, like you do it utilizing it in a wrong way, then you are, it says here, then you're eating and drinking judgment to yourself. Because you're not discerning that you're part of the body. You're not discerning where you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to behave. Because they were getting together and getting drunk and acting foolish. That was really the big problem here, okay? Look, in the Jewish community today, the Orthodox Jewish community specifically, when they do the Passover, which is probably what this is talking about, okay? He says, the Jewish community, what they'll do is they have the 4 cups like we use, as symbols of going through the Passover, the 4 cups. And they literally will drink to the top overflowing 4 cups of wine. Well, that's a lot of wine. And you would probably get drunk. Maybe not all of you, but most of you. That's a lot of wine. It's one thing to have a glass of wine. What about having 4? And we're not talking about a glass of wine filled up 2/3 of the way, like when you go to a bar or something, they give you a glass of wine and it's only filled up like a little bit. We're talking about they fill it till it runs over onto their fingers and that it spills as they're trying to get it to their mouth, okay? Because they're supposed to be having the symbol of abundant overflowing. Because I remember the first time I was at an Orthodox Erev Shabbat, and they were doing the Kiddush and Motzi. And I watched the rabbi pouring into the cup the wine. I thought he wasn't paying attention because it was spilling onto his fingers. Then he poured another one for somebody else and did the same thing. And then I realized, oh, that's what they're doing on purpose. And then I asked questions and I understood. Okay? So imagine 4 full glasses of wine. So these guys were not discerning what it means to be taking the Passover or to be doing Kiddush and Motzi, which is a fellowship ceremony, and those kind of things. We're not talking about communion here. That's a Catholic Church invention. Because when they did the wine and the bread, that's something that goes all the way back to Melchizedek and Avram. All right, so that wasn't an unusual thing. But they were not discerning that they shouldn't now take it into drunkenness. And I've seen the Jewish community do some things that are wonderful. I've seen other things that are appalling. Okay, you want to see people get crazy and drunk, go to the Chabad during Simchat Torah, which is when it's called the joy of the Torah, when they turn the scroll back to the beginning. They roll it back to the beginning. They will get drunk as anything you've ever seen. 2 bottles of vodka in each hand. I mean, I brought my children to the Simchat Torah once at the Chabad, and I had to leave. I didn't want them to see the craziness because they were literally getting rip-roaring drunk. And that's not appropriate. Okay? All right. Next, William.
Shalom, Rabbi. This is concerning the tzitzit.
Yep.
The world out there, there's a bunch of people that don't follow Torah and live unclean. My question is, there's hundreds of opportunities to run into people who may have handled pork or other stuff and brushed against my tzitzit, or I go to a restroom, a public restroom, and my tzitzit accidentally brushes against a urinal or something. What should I do with the tzitzit? Should I just wash it, or should I tear it apart? Is it
Just
okay
wash
to
it.
just wash it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just wash them. Okay? And guys, don't become too, I was going to say cheap or something. Change out your seat on a regular enough basis. If they start looking really bad, then you're not really representing very much there either, okay? I mean, especially have a nice set you wear on the Shabbats and the holy days. If you have one that you wear to work and it gets kind of raggedy pretty quick, well, have other sets that you can change out from time to time when they get all messed up, okay? Because they are, but they are also supposed to be a symbol of the Torah, of Yeshua, etc. And so you want to make sure that you keep them in some sort of good order. And if you think it's getting a little pricey, well, then learn how to make your own. We have a video on our website, on the YouTube channel, on how to make them. We sell the kits so that you can have a starter kit for the first set that you make, just so you can have one that's one of the 4 is already made, another one is started, so you can go from there, and the other ones you can make from scratch. And it's all in the video how to do it. And you can save money that way if it's about the money. Of course, if you use your second tithe and get them a bunch of new sets every time you go to a feast, you can certainly use your second tithe for that. Just pick up a few sets every time you come to the feast. And then have them. All right, good question. Okay, Sierra. Again. Hey, let me tell you something. Hold on, let me tell you something. I really respect and appreciate this woman. I'll tell you why. Because I remember when she first came and she was engaged. She wasn't married yet. And she wasn't quite where her husband was with all this. And she asked a lot of really good questions. She didn't attack anything. She asked questions, and then she would look at me sometimes like, okay. And she would go back and chew on it. But she wouldn't argue, but she would ask. And so that's why I appreciate that she keeps coming up and asking more questions, because that's what she always did. Okay? And so that's why I was feeling, at first I was wondering, it's not always clear when somebody who's in is thinking about marrying someone who's not quite or what. But she asked the questions and she was open to receive the answers, and that's why she's here. Amen. All right, what's your question?
So you've talked about, and it's mentioned throughout Scripture, that we should not do things that are pagan or have pagan, foundations. And one of those things would be Christmas or all those types of things. So would saying bless you to someone when they sneeze, does that fall?
The fire engines are returning. All right. Okay, so saying bless you when someone sneezes. Okay, so that would be something I would stop doing. Okay, because they had these superstitions that, you know, when you sneezed, that a demon would come in or some other thing was happening, and so you would have to say bless you or something like that. No, you had something, a tickle in your throat or your nose or whatever, and you sneeze, or allergies or something. So let's avoid. Now, if somebody says bless you, I may say thank you simply because they're trying to be nice and I'm appreciating what they're trying to do. All right? And so, you know, I don't get involved from that point of view. I don't want to be rude and obnoxious and just be like, they say bless you, and I just ignore them. I'm not going to get into a debate that I think it's pagan. And they're not thinking about some demon going in or out of me like might have been from the Middle Ages or something. But they're thinking it's the polite thing to do. So I do the polite thing back and I say thank you. Okay? But if somebody sneezes around me, I'm going to ask them to cover their mouth or their nose or whatever. I'm not going to say bless you. I'm going to say do that over there. All right. And by the way, I did have the blessing of doing her wedding, and it was very fantastic. So, all right. And that was a very interesting one indeed. Because we had those in the camp and those not in the camp, and they were in two different camps at the wedding. And they literally did not cross those boundaries. It was fun to watch. Anyway, you're next. And tell me again your first name.
Jerry.
Hi, Jerry.
Okay, I have a question that I asked Tom, and he asked me to ask you. And that question is when in Leviticus 16, it talks about the priest, how he was dressed, and he was wearing a head covering. Well, Corinthians, Paul addresses head wear, and I have asked that question numerous times, and I never get a satisfied answer. I don't understand what Paul is addressing there. Is he addressing?
As far as the men?
The men wearing something on their head.
It's actually very simple. All right? The translation is atrocious. He's not talking about their heads covered. He's talking about them veiling their faces. Okay? The men are not to veil their faces. And the veiling of the face was what the male prostitutes did in the pagan temples. And the translation is just very poor. But if you go and dig under it into the Greek, it really is about veiling their faces. It's not about covering their heads.
Wow.
Okay? Does that help fix that?
Very much.
Okay.
Yeah. That is totally different.
All right? Because over the centuries, the anti-Semitism poured into the Brit Hadashah especially because they wanted to attack the Jews who like to wear a kippah. And that was something they would cover their heads with, which is a tradition that doesn't break Torah or anything. It has nothing to do with Leviticus, because the turban that the priest wore was this big, literally like you'd picture in the Middle Eastern turban to be. Mm-hmm. All right, so the modern day yarmulke or kippah does not look like that. But the Jews, by tradition, and this is Talmudic, wear a head covering to remind them there's something above them, to keep their pride and ego in check. Hey, there's a higher thing than you. Okay. And so that tradition was going on even in Paul's day, and later. And so those who were manhandling Scripture wanted to make sure to translate that to get away from saying covering your head is wrong. Now let's always remember, if Yahweh says something is right, it's always right. If it's wrong, it's always wrong. And if it hasn't said anything about it, then it hasn't said anything about it.
Wow.
Okay?
Am I allowed 2 questions?
and a pair of gym shoes.
Okay, so this summer something I think came to me, and that is found in 2 Kings, the 19th chapter, and verse 29. Am I wrong when I couple that up with Leviticus 25, the first part of Leviticus, up to I think like verse 16?
And what'd you say, Leviticus 20?
25. The first part of Leviticus where it talks about the Shemitah and the Jubilee.
Right. Yes.
And I mean, all of a sudden this came to me that this is what 2 Kings is talking about.
Yeah, 2 Kings is talking about the Shemitah cycle, the 7-year cycle, and what you do as far as not eating until when you can actually eat what you reap, etc. So it's talking about the same things, yes, absolutely.
Okay. That's what my question was. I read that passage time after time after time, probably for the last 50 years.
Right.
And
So 1929 says, and this is the sign for you. This year you eat what grows of itself, and the second year what springs from that, and the third year you sow and reap and plant vineyards and eat their fruit. So this is talking about things that are connected with the Shemitah cycle.
Very good.
You're welcome. Okay. Rob, do we have anything online?
We do. And I was also, I guess, reminded that the parents need to go leave at like 6:15, I think it is, to go get their kids at the farm.
Yes.
Okay.
So give me another about 7 minutes. We'll send you guys back to the farm to get the children.
All right.
All right.
From Joanne, it says, Shalom, Rabbi. My question is about loving yourself. I struggle with that because of the verse in 2 Timothy 3, talking about men being lovers of self. Is this more about loving your self-sovereignty above Yah's?
Yeah. Look, loving yourself, there's an appropriate way to love yourself. There's a narcissistic way to love yourself. There's all kinds of, all about me, ego, pride, self. And there's loving yourself, being kind to yourself. Like love as you would expect from Scripture, that how we express love is to be the fruit of the Spirit, to be gentle to yourself and kind to yourself and appreciate yourself and all these kind of things. So people who struggle with loving themselves have to realize it's not talking about what Timothy's being told here. Timothy's being told something about people that are ego-driven, pride-driven. It's about me. It's all about me. That's the way he expressed it by saying lovers of themselves. Okay? Those that are about the me. You need to be able to love yourself and say, I can love me. It's not all about me. It doesn't have to be about me, but I can love me and appreciate me and take care of me, okay? All right, next.
Okay, from Linda Vandenbroel. Says, Shalom from the Netherlands. Says, in Revelation 3:14, does that mean that Yeshua is the first of all creation? And does that mean that only the Father always existed and spoke Yeshua into existence in Genesis?
All right. So in 3:14, you guys are trying to get me into that again. Okay. In 3:14, it says, and to the messenger of the assembly of Laodicea write, the Amen, the trustworthy and true witness, the beginning of the creation of Elohim says this. Okay? The one that began all of creation. Now, we do have a strange verse that mentions, he is the only brought forth of a father. I don't know what that means. Nobody knows what that actually means. We know that there wasn't a father and a mother and a baby, as far as in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim, even though we refer to him as the Son and the Father as the Father, okay? So this is that he was at the beginning of creation. Okay, he's saying, look, this is the trustworthy and true witness. This is the one who was at the beginning of all things, who created all things. In other words, he's saying things to make sure that he's establishing his credentials to say what he's about to say. Okay, so hopefully that helped. All right, Rob, one more? No more. Okay, Becky, and after Becky, we'll send everybody to go get their children.
I'm prepared for a smackdown, if necessary.
Okay, I haven't gotten to do much of that yet today, or at least not this afternoon, so I'm ready.
So you talked earlier about being a red and how the emotional is different. And I relate to that very much. And it makes it extra challenging for me as far as the second life. You know, it's very ethereal, like it's not a tangible, solid thing. So sometimes I struggle with like the motivation. I have a very healthy fear as to I need to walk it out, and that whole idea of, I don't know, maybe I'm afraid of dying. I don't know. But as far as like what's next, and there's no one knows anything for real. And so is there another way that I could be motivated that's not hyper focused on the idea of I didn't do everything I was supposed to do now to get to wherever I'm supposed to go when I really can't see or feel that?
All right. I can relate. I understand what you're trying to say. Okay, and I apologize to everyone on live stream. I didn't realize I was going to walk right in front of the camera when I went that way. Okay. Look, from my perspective, I am not motivated by eternity at the moment. I'm not motivated, not strong, not a strong motive. That's not my drive, the forever thing and all that. Now, I'm not a big fan of dying, so that motivates me a little bit, like it said for you. You know why I do what I do? Because it works. So I focus on that, okay? And that's a very red thought, because Reds want things to work. We want to do things that work. We want to make sure that nothing's getting in the way of things that work, and that motivates me not to mess it up because it will get in the way of it working, all right? That doesn't mean I'm not looking forward to eternity. I'm saying it's not the thing that really drives me. I can't get that kind of emotion and drive towards the forever. I can get a lot of it towards not dying, or in terms of not worrying about death and then there's nothing, because to a Red, nothing is awful, because nothing's worse than being bored or having nothing to do or, just nothingness. And so I'm excited about that. There will be stuff to do, whatever that is. But mostly I'm motivated by it works now. My life, okay, a lot of you know my story. I'll give a real quick, just 5-second version of it. I was raised and grew up a secular Jew, so I kept nothing. So I know what my life was like with nothing for about 24 years, 23 years. Then I came into belief in Yeshua and Torah observance. I know I was a Jew, but we didn't keep anything. So I didn't actually go into Torah observance until I was in my 20s. So then I know what my life was like doing this stuff. And it worked beautifully. And I know how my life didn't work for the first 24 years. And then there was a place that I came to where Yah brought me through with, long story short, where we ended up walking into nothingness after walking this out for a period of time. And I had a 7-year journey without all this. So I have 2 now experiences without all this. And guess what? They were very similar. They both were awful. Okay? Then he brought me back. And when he brought me back, it worked again. Okay? And so I tell people all the time, if it turns out that none of this stuff is true, it turns out to be some other thing, at least we know it works. So why wouldn't you do it if for no other reason than the fact that it works? Now, I believe all the other stuff is true too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I don't, okay? I believe everything I tell you 100%, or I wouldn't say it. I think one of the reasons why a lot of you like the teaching is because you know with full integrity, I believe every word that comes out of my mouth fully. Okay? Now, that being said, though, if you have some doubts, like Sierra, the person that asked you about, how do you know that God exists and that kind of thing, you know what? Doing what this book says works. Okay? It makes sense of this crazy confusion of a world, this crazy confusion, It gives us something to look forward to. And I don't know how anybody lives without this book, without being, just depressed and neurotic or some other thing. Because how do you live with nothing to look forward to? And no way of understanding why. This book helps me understand why everything is exactly the way it is. And what it says actually plays out exactly the way it says. So you have answers. How do you walk around life without them? I have no idea. People were miserable. And when I didn't have answers, it was miserable. Okay, so I know that. So to you, I would focus on, if you need to focus on that. I need to keep doing this and do it diligently because it works. Okay? Amen. All right. All right, all you parents that need to leave and go get your teenagers and younger children over at the MTOI property, over, with the activities going on, go get your children. All right? You're only going to miss a couple of questions, and you can watch that on the recording. All right, Gerardo.
How you doing, Rabbi?
Awesome.
Great to hear. Now, I had one question for you, but standing in line, you popped up two more in my head, so how does that gonna work?
Say it again?
I said I had one question for you, but standing in line, you gave me two more questions.
Well, try at least the first one, and we'll see how it goes. I've only got about 12 minutes.
Okay. Matthew chapter 13, verse 7. Well, verse 6 to verse 7, and then if we skip down to about 22, I've kind of been stuck on this for about a month. Slow reading. I know from Proverbs Conversations, well, let me give you a little bit more background about me, something that you don't know. I hear a lot of conversations, right, and then I hear numbers or policies and directions. That's just the way I interpret things. I don't know why, that's the way it works. But because it is, from our conversations, I don't want to get all in and all that again. But I asked you a question, and I said, man, Rabbi, I feel like I'm getting beat all across the board. I thought about something, I put it in the blueprint, put it down packed, business proposal, whatnot. You got it going on. You doing everything. A few other things that was a lot secular, but anyways, the question comes from when I asked something about, I guess, either business or a mindset or something, right? And I was reading Matthew, like I said, and I've been stuck on this chapter for about a month. It came to the thorns, right? You read it on 6-7 already on the 22nd. It's about thorns, right?
Right.
And if we go to the 22nd, and that is sown amongst a thorn, he who hears the word, and the worry of his age and the deceit of riches choke the word, and it becomes fruitless.
Right.
So, thank you.
Okay, so one of my favorite chapters in the Brit, I love the parable of the sower because it really explains most of the things that we experience in our lives and are good answers to why we receive or don't receive or react a certain way, why other people do what they do in terms of their relationship to the word. And so what happens is you can have, it says here as far as the thorns, one of two or both situations that could really cause the word to become fruitless. In other words, where it doesn't bear the fruit it was intended to bear. And one is worry, okay? And so the worries of this age, in other words, focusing on the concerns that are going on in the world. Those things that are, we're all worried now about inflation, or we're worried about gas prices, we're worried about some disease that's going around and pandemics or whatever. The worries of the world. Or we could also say the things that the world worries about. Okay, so we can get distracted by the things that the world worries about. And there's the deceit of riches, where our pursuit of the dollar, so to speak, becomes our God, becomes the thing we pursue. And with that focus, there is certain things that in your pursuit of the dollar, if that's really what you're pursuing, you may very likely be tempted to break Torah to get it. And if you break Torah to get it, then the Torah has become fruitless. And so this is what it's talking about. In your panic and worry about the things the world worries about, you may also break Torah. I've had people say to me things like, but Rabbi, if I keep Sabbath, I'll lose my job, and Yahweh wouldn't want me to lose my job. Well, how do you know that? Maybe he has a better one lined up for you. So maybe he does want you to lose your job. Maybe it's about time you did something different. I got a whole bunch of you that really weren't thrilled about that and now have much better jobs and are very happy with it. And so let's understand that these are the things that can happen with us, okay? Where in our pursuit of or our understanding of what's going on in the world, our world and the world around us, we could find excuses to give us that drive to break Torah or excuse not to keep it. Because after all, look at what's going on in the world. Well, Rabbi, I can't tithe. I don't make enough money. Well, go go fix that. Oh, but if what if I change my job and I get another one and it's no good and I've got job security here and I got this? We make all these excuses. And that's part of the parable here. If you don't have the roots, these are the things that could blow you out or make you fruitless. Okay? All right, Sierra.
So I think this is a very rare circumstance, but anyway, I'll just tell you the question. So if it's for the preservation of life, would it be justified to do two things, eat pork or cannibalization? I hate this, but it is something that I've heard in extreme circumstances that Jews potentially did, like in movies like The Zookeeper's Wife, which I don't know is true or not. Yeah.
Okay. As far as the eating pork or any of these other things, okay, life and death, we have a very strange perspective on because we're physical beings that can die. Of course, if we had a proper perspective, we wouldn't worry about dying. We're all going to die. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you're all going to die. Unless he comes before that, you're all going to die. The thing is, we have a great hope of a resurrection and eternal life after that. But so exactly when you die shouldn't really matter. You'd like to die at a time that you're okay with it and you feel like you've done everything you want to do and that kind of thing. But death almost never comes at a convenient time, okay? I mean, there are those rare few that get to an age old enough where, you know what, they're just ready. They're tired and they've gone through enough and they're ready. But a lot of death, probably most of it, doesn't work that way. So when you're in a life and death threatened position where you'd be forced to eat pork or have something other, horrible adverse thing that you would break Torah to do or die, why wouldn't you just choose death anyway? We do have an example in the book of Maccabees where Hannah and her sons, and the sons were basically told, eat this pork or we're going to skin you alive and boil you in oil. And one by one, they said no, and one by one, in front of the rest, they did that. Horrifying. It's bad enough to be the first one. Could you imagine you're the third or the fourth one watching this and you still have to say no? You still have the power inside you after watching your brothers skinned alive and boiled in oil, and you still have the strength to say, I'll take that. Wow. Okay? So hopefully that answered that question. Okay, Gerardo.
Just to go over your last comment. So as long as my roots are okay, I shouldn't worry about the other two examples that is in the parable of the sower, correct?
Look, as long as you're not pursuing riches in a way that would cause you to put Torah off to the side because it's inconvenient to your pursuit of riches, and as long as you're not worried about the stuff going on out there to the point where it, again, causes the Torah to be fruitless. A lot of us have concerns about what we see going on out there, but it's when that worry causes you to put Torah to the side because you're more concerned about those things than what you need to do Torah-wise, that's the concern, okay?
Yes, sir. And the question here, when we left the last place we was at, it was around Pesach to Shavuot, and I personally, once I start paying tithes, that's pretty much what now, because I wasn't a tithe payer. I pay you tithes, but I don't pay nobody else tithes. That's what my wife doing. But Shavuot coming up will be the start of my third year.
Okay, the year starts Sukkot, not Shavuot.
I understand that. That was Jessica's point. We started attending faithfully Shavuot. Does that matter or no?
No.
Sukkot?
When you started attending, wait, hold on again with the fire engines here. They're a little quieter, so I guess they're returning. Okay, your tithing cycle goes from Sukkot to Sukkot. Okay, the tithing cycle. Now, you will start your tithing whenever you come to the place where you're convicted that that's something you're supposed to do. The only thing that's relevant as to when you start is the third tithe. And I have been, I believe, inspired with, as far as since we don't know when the Shemitah year is, the seventh year is, I know that people claim they do. I don't believe that they're actually necessarily correct, okay? They might be, but I don't know enough to be strong enough to say we know when it is. So I believe I was inspired to tell you that the Sukkot that you're closest to, okay, so let's say you came in Shavuot to the understanding, and that's when you started tithing. Well, that Shavuot is closer to the next Sukkot than the previous one. So I would say that Sukkot will start, after Sukkot, will start year 1. If you came to believe and understand tithing in like January or February or December, well, that's closer to the previous Sukkot. I would count this year as year 1. If it's happening right now, you're kind of 50-50, and I'd let you pick whichever way. If you are more confident in Yah's provision, I would count this year as year 1, because that brings year 3 quicker. Or you could wait till Sukkot and then start year 1. All right? So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. But you have to ask yourself the motivation. Why would I want to put it off? Well, because it means it'll be longer before I have to do 3. Well, that's a wrong attitude. Okay? So then maybe you should always consider that to do it as year 1. Okay? And count your years from there. Okay, I have no problem with you starting, to understand third tithe, and let's say it's August and it's almost Sukkot, to realize, well, the year's almost over, so this shouldn't really count as year 1. That's perfectly legitimate. I would wait till after Sukkot. That'll be year 1. All right? Okay. All right, well, everybody, I hope that was a good study. I want to thank you all for your comments and questions. Also praise Yah that my voice almost sounds normal. Okay, so it's almost back to full strength, which is kind of the opposite of most celebrations we have. My voice usually deteriorates during the feast. So this feast, it happens to be getting stronger, which is really good. Started out really weak. So that's fantastic. Appreciate, again, all of the comments and the questions and the reactions and the responses. I hope this was a blessing to all of you. Let's go ahead and get one of the men to close us in prayer. All right. Kendall, come on up here and close us in prayer. Were you trying to come up, Kurt? Oh, you're trying to get the mic for him. Okay. No, he needs to come up here anyway. It makes the camera work a little easier. All right, if you'll all rise, we'll close in prayer. I'm sorry, it's unleavened bread. Stand up. No rising, we'll stand. All right. Go ahead, Kendall. Whoop.
There we go. Abba, Father, creator of the heavens and the earth. Father, we are just so very thankful for all of us being here for Unleavened Bread. We thank you for leadership to be willing to answer so many of our questions with integrity. We just ask that all the questions that were answered, that we would take those to heart and really think about those. And as we go out through the day, Father, that you just watch over us and just continue to open our eyes, ears, and hearts to your truths, Father, as we try to walk this out the best way we can. We love you, and we thank you and praise you. In the name of your Son, Yeshua, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. All right, listen, everybody, be blessed, be safe, enjoy your free day. Keep in mind, though, the weather is definitely going to be changing for the hotter over the next couple of days. So keep an eye on your phones and look up the weather, because it's going to be in the 80s here towards the end of the week. Oh, you say that now until you sit in this hot tent. They're all like, whoa, yeah. 83 degrees and more in this tent may not be so fun. But we'll see. It'll definitely be warmer than this. All right. Blessings, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you on Thursday.